My name is Tiffany. Before getting married, I worked full-time. But the truth is, that company had terrible working conditions. I had nearly 90 hours of unpaid overtime. I thought about working even after marriage, but due to health issues, I decided to quit when I got married. Now, I live a healthy lifestyle, waking up and going to bed at regular hours. My health improved drastically after quitting. My husband, Theo, didn't oppose my decision to quit. He seems to love that I am home, doing household chores and welcoming him back from work. Back when we were newlyweds, he would often say, "I'm so lucky to have a wife who welcomes me home." Though, after 5 years, that sentiment became a given. But that's to be expected. Still, issues crop up over the years. My mother-in-law, Sarah, who used to be sweet, now often asks, "When will you give me a grandchild?" every time we visit. And she always chooses to say it when Theo isn't around. Years of hearing this has built up a considerable amount of stress for me. To be honest, I don't want to see her because of the pressure she gives. My father-in-law, John, is a quiet, kind man who doesn't interfere. The irony is, it's Theo who says, "Kids are just a hassle, they also cost a lot." Yet, when confronted with his parents, he acts as if it's none of his business. Once I told him, "If you don't want kids, explain it to your parents." But he shrugged it off, saying, "Isn't that a conversation for women?" At crucial times, he evades responsibility with his own set of values. Because of this, to his mother, I seem the wife who can't have children, and he's the husband supporting her. Finally, I tried to clarify. It's Theo who doesn't want kids. But Sarah, convinced I can't get pregnant, replied, "You're just trying to put the blame on someone else." John sometimes tells Sarah not to interfere with our choices, but she doesn't listen. In the end, Theo doesn't want the hassle of parenting, but doesn't want to upset his mother either. It's evident that he's always trying to please his mum. Honestly, I never thought he'd be this unreliable. If a ship were sinking, he'd probably save his mother before me. Yes, he's a bit old-fashioned, but at least you're not living with them. My mother casually responds over a weekday afternoon call. Over the past year, I've often vented to my mother about Theo and Sarah. Although my mom is quiet, she's rational. She patiently listens and often calms me down. I feel guilty sometimes, thinking that a wife shouldn't complain about her husband to her parents. But with Theo not being supportive, my mom is the only person who truly understands me. I'm sorry for always sulking about this. I know you have your struggles too. It's okay, Mom's fine now. The hospital tests showed nothing wrong. In reality, she had heart surgery and got a pacemaker just 3 months ago. I was worried when I heard she was going in for the procedure, but she just laughed it off. Reminds me of when I told my husband, he said, "Pacemakers are pretty common these days, it's not that big of a deal." Yet, when his own mother sprained her ankle, he panicked and promised I'd help out without asking me first. Talk about double standards. I mean, a surgical cut is way more serious than putting a plaster on an ankle. I always complain over the phone and rarely visit my family since I live far away. I haven't been the best daughter to my parents, but this time I plan to surprise my mom on her birthday with a trip in collaboration with my dad. I'm home. Dinner's ready. My husband, as always, takes a seat at the dinner table. He never really comments on the food anymore, but I was excited about the plan I made with my father. Actually, my mom's birthday is coming up. Oh. He paused eating his steak and looked at me quizzically. I was thinking of booking a hotel in Lake Tahoe and taking a trip there. Really? He didn't seem too keen. The hotel is quite fancy and it's popular around here. I got a great deal through a contact. Upon hearing the word luxury, his eyes lit up. A luxury hotel? We're getting separate rooms from your parents, right? Yes, we are, and since both my parents will be there, why don't we do some sightseeing in Lake Tahoe together? Sure. At least he seems somewhat interested. Considering he spends most of his time with his parents, he can't complain about the trip with mine once in a while. Luckily this time, I don't need to arrange the date or the hotel booking. My parents are taking care of everything. It's like I'm letting them do everything for me. This might seem more like me being spoiled rather than being kind to them. What's the trip? I need to apply for my leaves. My husband threw the question over his shoulder as I was packing in the bedroom. Didn't I tell you? It's on the 23rd and the 24th. Oh, right. Turning around, I saw him absent-mindedly fiddling with his phone. I've told him about this trip before. He never really pays much attention to me or my family. But on reflection, indifference was better than his past reactions. On the day of the trip, we drove to the luxury hotel in Lake Tahoe. My parents had arrived the previous night. Today's plan was to explore Lake Tahoe with them and enjoy dinner at the hotel. It's been a while since I last saw them. Maybe since my mother's surgery. They are both retired and don't usually splurge, so a trip like this should be fun. I sat in the passenger seat, leafing through a Lake Tahoe travel magazine. Upon arriving, I planned to call my parents to the lobby after checking in, but they were already in the parking lot, and standing next to them was Sarah. Suddenly, my husband parked the car abruptly and rushed over to them. What on earth is happening? I was sure I had explained the plan properly. I quickly got out the passenger seat of the car and followed. What's going on there? While I was flustered, my husband began speaking fluently to my parents. You knew of a great hotel, didn't you? We plan to enjoy it with my parents from tomorrow. You've already paid for the stay, right? My parents were stunned. Of course they would be. This was completely unplanned. My mother-in-law, as brazen as ever, said, You sure know some good hotels. Take care of it for us, okay? And next time, let's go to Alaska. What are you saying? On the other hand, my father-in-law, seemingly as clueless about the situation as we were, asking my husband, Didn't you invite us on this trip? You said you'd cover the costs. Hearing that, I could feel the blood rush to my head. Wait a minute. This hotel was arranged by my parents. Why would you just invite yours? Now my mother-in-law chimed in. What's the big deal? You can't hog such a nice hotel for yourself. You should care more about your husband's parents. I wanted to treat my parents to a luxury trip because I rarely get to see them, unlike John and Sarah. Plus, today is my mom's birthday. My mother-in-law, with a really look, sized me up from head to toe. You've never gotten me a birthday present. Such blatant favoritism. What? I raised my voice in disbelief. You did send Sarah her favorite flowers recently, didn't you? That was from your son. Stop taking credit for other people's gestures. I looked at my husband, who was avoiding my gaze. He never showed any interest in giving gifts. Since our marriage, I've been the one choosing and giving gifts. So you kept silent about the gift for Sarah. Looking into my husband's eyes, he said something unthinkable. Look, I'm using your money to buy them. It's the same as if I picked and bought them myself. He seemed genuinely annoyed. Generally, after marriage, my parents should be the priority. Send your parents home. What? That's right. From now on, it's quality time for our son and us. My mother-in-law interjected without missing a beat. I was deeply hurt. I never imagined he felt this way. Where did the kind man I married disappear to? Then a robust man in a suit approached us quickly. Is there a problem? Before he could finish, my mother-in-law began speaking at lightning speed. We want these people gone. We'll use their remaining nights. I'm sorry, but we can't do that. Why not? She snapped. They have already paid, and we have them booked until the day after tomorrow. In her fury, she pointed at me. She is my son's wife. What belongs to my son's wife and her parents is practically ours. My husband just nodded. Seeing that scene, all my pent-up feelings felt like they exploded. The man apologized and said they couldn't do that, but she replied, First of all, you are letting such poor-looking people stay here. Won't it ruin the hotel's reputation? My husband started blaming me along. I decided to approach my husband's back and tell him the truth. You know, this place is my father's family home. What? My husband and mother-in-law stared at me with wide eyes. The man in the suit is my father's younger brother, which means he is my uncle. My uncle started speaking in a firm yet humble tone. My brother and I have a big age difference. Back then, our parents were busy with their hotel business. He took care of me like a parent. Everything I have now is because of him. Hearing this, my father became emotional and whispered, When I heard you were staying here, I was truly happy, thinking I could finally repay his kindness. But you, thinking you could stay for free just because it's your son's wife's family? Oh!" I could hear my mother-in-law's groaning. We have rooms available ranging from $450 to $1,800 per night. Please proceed the front desk if you are interested. Stunned by the price, my husband and his mother were flustered. What do? We don't know any other hotels. What do you expect me to say? Watching the two, my father-in-law let out a deep sigh. This is karma for always taking credit for Tiffany's achievements and trying to impress your mother with them. My husband seemed at a loss for words. I'm truly sorry, everyone. I never thought my son would do something like this. He began to apologize deeply. No, wait, John. I quickly intervened. My father-in-law is a victim too. He was invited to the hotel by his son only to find out he'd been deceived. Though my mother-in-law seemed to have been told even more. Suddenly, she had an idea. Wait, since it's a hotel run by relatives, can't you give us a discount? We are family after all. How shameless can she be? Has she forgotten all that she has done? But my uncle calmly stated, I don't consider someone who insults my loved ones as family. His words made me realize something. The way my husband and mother-in-law had been treating me all along was condescending. All the unpleasant tasks were left to me. Any prize was stolen by them. What was I to them? They exploited and belittled me. If they had thought about my family even a little, this trip wouldn't have happened. You've always looked down on me, haven't you? I said, looking at my husband, who hung his head in silence. You thought my parents would let this slide if you pushed hard enough. How awful! I couldn't afford to stay at such an expensive hotel. I just wanted to impress people." With a face full of regret, he glared at me. My father-in-law approached, looking disappointed. "Isn't this just like you? Always trying to look good in front of your mother. Who is the person you should be protecting the most right now?" "Huh?" My husband stood still, looking confused. With a stump face, my father-in-law continued. "Listen, you are married. Your priority should be protecting your wife, not impressing your mother. And yet, you—" My husband looked away. "But—" I noticed the expression on his face. He will always choose his mother, no matter what anyone says. Summoning my courage, I raised my voice. "John, thank you for all you've done for me so far. You've helped me more times than he ever did, but I can't continue living with him as a couple any longer." My husband looked up, surprised. "Let's get a divorce." Saying the word divorce out loud made me feel incredibly liberated. "Right, I've always wanted to divorce him." "Are you serious?" I heard my mother's voice from behind. I nodded. "Yes, I've been thinking about it for a while now." "Hold on, I'll apologize for what happened this time." Watching my husband scramble was almost like seeing a stranger's plight. It's not just about what happened this time. It's the forgotten gifts for Sarah and countless other things. Of course, today played part in my decision. Suddenly, my mother-in-law, red-faced with fury, yelled, "A woman like you, who doesn't work or even have children, should be grateful just to be married." The realization that I could also sever ties with her left me with no fear. "Look, I won't be belittled. And just for your information, it was your son who didn't want kids, saying parenting would be a hassle. I bet you never heard that from him." My mother-in-law just sat down, stunned. She had always believed it was my fault, not realizing it was her son's decision all along. So, my husband and mother-in-law were taken away by my father-in-law, and I went on to enjoy a family vacation with my own parents. "You had quite the eventful birthday, didn't you?" "I'm sorry." My mum, with her usual cheerful tone, "As long as you are happy, that's all that matters. But who knew he was that awful? I should have visited earlier to see how things were." "No, it's okay. I've been in that life for so long. I became indifferent. This was a wake-up call." My typically silent father seemed to have a hint of joy on his face. After that, my husband and I divorced. But it seems the relationship between him and his mother has soured. He was never the considerate type and always left everything but his job to me. Without me, his apartment was reportedly turned into a garbage dump. Apparently, my ex-mother-in-law visits him regularly to clean up. However, she's nearing her breaking point, often fighting with the son she used to adore. Once, their argument got so heated the police were called. My ex-father-in-law claims she brought this upon herself by spoiling their son. Interestingly, on the day of the hotel incident, a neighborhood association president, whom my ex-mother-in-law was close with, was vacationing there too. He saw all her unreasonable antics. As a result, she's lost all respect in their community, labeled as the mother of the husband who bullied his wife into divorce. As for me, I found a job at my uncle's hotel. Searching for a job post-divorce, he offered me a position, keeping the fact that I'm the owner's relative a secret. I'm now learning from more experienced staff members. The hotel job requires meticulous attention, and while there are tasks I haven't mastered yet, and times I've been corrected. It's a far cry from the unappreciated housework I did before. Every effort here gets its due recognition.
Did my child get born while I was on my trip? My son-in-law called with an easygoing tone, oblivious to the funeral that was about to happen. Yes, the child was safely born, I responded, being unexpectedly on the receiving end of my daughter's cell phone call. I heard him click his tongue in disappointment. Damn it. Please switch me to my wife. I'd like to talk to her directly. Your wife has passed away. What? Come to the funeral immediately. Don't joke around. That's too harsh, man. My son-in-law laughed off my words in disbelief. All of this is your fault. You must pay for it, I muttered under my breath and hung up the phone. My name is Mary, 58 years old. Just a few days ago, I had a daughter who was turning 30. Now she lies peacefully in a white coffin. I touch her cold cheek and whisper to her, Karen. But there's no response. As I look at her doll-like face, recent events replay in my mind. If only I had rushed to Karen sooner that time. Just thinking about it fills me with an unbearable regret, and tears overflow endlessly. 1 week ago, my daughter, who lives far away, called me with a worried voice. Mom, what do I do? I'm starting to feel contractions and I'm so scared. It's your first time giving birth. It's only natural you'd be scared. I called the hospital and they told me to come in when the contractions are 10 minutes apart, but I'm alone and feeling vulnerable. Isn't your husband at work and your mother-in-law living with you? However, despite knowing the due date, my son-in-law and his mother had booked a trip abroad. You'll be fine with the midwife when you give birth. The two of them left my daughter alone as she started to have contractions. I was taken aback by their callousness. I advised my daughter to take a cab to the hospital if the pain got too severe, and immediately hopped in my car. It's strange that my usually lively daughter to sound so down. My house is about a 3-hour drive from where my daughter lives. But of course, I got stuck in traffic and it ended up taking me 5 hours to get there. When I finally arrived at my daughter's house, it was already dark and the surroundings were pitch black. Yet, there were no lights on in the house. Did she go to the hospital? Or, surely not. Shaking off an ominous feeling, I opened the front door only to find my daughter collapsed there. In a panic, I cradled her in my arms, her clothes soaking wet, seemingly due to her water breaking, and the floor was drenched as well. Moreover, her face looked so haggard it was hard to believe she was in her last month of pregnancy. I called an ambulance as I tried to suppress my trembling hands. Once we arrived at the hospital and she regained consciousness, it was determined she couldn't give birth naturally, and she was taken to the operating room. Please, let both my daughter and her baby be okay, I prayed fervently outside the operating room. After a while, I heard a baby's cry, and the doctor emerged from behind the door, informing me, "It's a healthy baby girl." Just as I breathed a sigh of relief, the doctor, with a stern face, uttered unthinkable words. "Your daughter lost a lot of blood, and her strength has been severely depleted. We need to monitor her closely for a while. Please be prepared for the worst." What? No, that can't... My daughter, who had just been wheeled out of the operating room and into her hospital room, was utterly exhausted. My daughter was in such a state, with countless needles in her arms and an oxygen mask on her face. The joy of my granddaughter's birth was overshadowed by concern for my daughter, Karen. Perhaps to cheer us up, the nurse allowed Karen to hold her newborn daughter. Upon doing so, Karen opened her eyes slightly and smiled, and shed tears of joy, saying, "I'm glad you were born safely." 2 days later, I was able to have a conversation with my daughter, who had regained a bit of strength. "Sorry for causing you trouble, Mom. As long as you and the baby are safe, that's all that matters. I asked my husband if I could give birth at my parents' house, but he rejected the idea. I thought he'd at least cancel his trip. He's awful for leaving you in labor like that. Yeah, I might not be able to protect the baby if things stay like this." My daughter, seeming determined, asked me for a favor. That same day, I completed what she asked, and when I reported back, Karen, looking relieved, closed her eyes and fell back asleep. "I wish she would recover. She's so pale." I prayed desperately over and over, but my hopes did not reach the heavens, and Karen's condition worsened day by day. During this time, I called her husband countless times, but all my calls went unanswered. 3 days later, despite our efforts, my daughter departed this world, leaving behind her newborn child. Karen's last words were heartbreaking. "I'm sorry for being such a failure of a daughter. Please protect the baby, Mom." She wasn't the type to say such things. "Karen, I'm sorry I couldn't get to you sooner." My heart was overwhelmed with grief and pain at losing my precious daughter, but I couldn't just wallow in sorrow. I made countless calls to my son-in-law's mobile phone to inform him of Karen's death, but he never picked up. In sheer desperation, I headed to my daughter's home to look up the phone number of the hotel she was staying at during her trip. While there, searching for anything like an itinerary, I stumbled upon my daughter's diary in a drawer. What in the world? This is horrible! The diary contained a truth far beyond my imagination. As I continued reading, I discovered the real meaning behind my daughter's words when she called herself a failure of a daughter. Overwhelmed with trembling hands and a heart that wouldn't stop shaking, I crouched down right there on the spot. I will never forgive them for causing my child such pain. I'll make them regret this. I held my daughter's diary close to my heart, making that vow with determination. Several days later, her carefree son-in-law returned my call. I'm back in the States. It's the return of the Lord and Master. Has the baby been born safely? Yes, the baby is full of life. This is my wife's phone, right? The voice seems different. Oh, you're right. It's been a while, Richard. I'm Karen's mother. Oh, it's my mother-in-law. You should have said so sooner. Hurry up and let me talk to Karen. I'm afraid I can't do that. Our daughter has passed away. What? It's your fault for leaving her alone when her labor started. She's dead? Don't joke around. The funeral is about to start. If you feel any remorse, come right now. I just informed him of the location of the funeral and immediately ended the call. He rang back immediately, but I didn't want him disturbing my farewell to my daughter, so I ignored him and turned off my phone. When the time came, the funeral was carried out solemnly. I'm so sorry, Karen. It must have been hard for you, and I'm sorry I didn't realize it sooner. Tears kept falling no matter how I tried to wipe them away. Next to me, I could see my husband biting his lip, keeping his head down, desperately holding back his tears. After the cremation, as I was carefully holding the small box with Karen's ashes, her husband and her mother-in-law finally arrived. They were shocked to see the sorrow-filled faces of those present. Furthermore, it seemed they had come straight from the airport. Her husband was wearing a Hawaiian shirt, and her mother-in-law had on a large-brimmed straw hat with her sunglasses still on. My husband's face turned into that of a demon's. What's with that disrespectful attire? Can't you at least dress appropriately for a funeral? Well, we had to hurry because of what you said. Before making any excuses, apologized to our daughter, sincerely. Then, her son-in-law, rather than breaking down in front of her portrait as I thought he would, let out a snort and chuckled. I should be the one receiving an apology. Who's going to take care of the house now? Anybody can give birth. She was an utterly hopeless wife. What a despicable thing to say. I'm just telling it like it is. His mother, sitting next to him, fervently nodded. That's right. Angry, my hand tightened up into a fist, my nails digging into my skin, a sharp pain shooting up. My usually gentle husband had an uncharacteristically fierce look in his eyes, a sight I had never seen before. Yet, he didn't seem bothered by it. So, did she have a girl? Yes, I knew it. If only you could have given me a boy to carry on the family name. You're just a useless, incompetent daughter-in-law. I gritted my teeth, suppressing the urge to lash out at him. I don't need the kid. Raise it yourselves. That was the plan from the start. Besides, you and Karen's divorce was already finalized. What? Divorce? I submitted the divorce papers at Karen's request. You wrote them yourself, right? Used them as a threat? Karen, who had been tolerating all sorts of abuse because she believed her child needed a father, had entrusted me with the divorce papers because she feared she couldn't protect the child. Karen won custody, so we will take responsibility for raising the child. You went and filed the papers without permission? But since Karen's gone, by default, I get custody. I'll raise the kid, so pay up child support. Do you understand what you're saying? Yeah, hand over the kid. I'll take care of her for free. Just pay me. How despicable. We've already applied for guardianship, so you're the one who's going to pay child support. Huh? You're greedier than I thought. But I have Karen's life insurance payout. I can afford to pay around $1,000. I was taken back by my son-in-law's words. It sounded like he had planned for Karen to pass away first. Wait, you mean... Everything went according to plan. Karen finally made herself useful, huh? Ha ha. So you deliberately left our daughter? Well, yeah. I was so shocked I nearly collapsed, but my husband caught me in the nick of time. Even he was shaking his shoulders in disbelief, whispering, I can't believe it. The relatives around us started to whisper and exchange glances. When I told my mother-in-law the baby was a girl, she yelled at me, You can't even give me a grandson. You're such a useless daughter-in-law. My husband told me, You're a total failure. A hopeless woman. Disgusting. I was really sad. But I thought they'd love the baby once she was born, so I have to endure it for now. I took my daughter's diary out from my bag and began to read. In the scorching midsummer sun, my mother-in-law made me go shopping. When I got back, she immediately made me pull weeds from the garden. She kept ordering me around, even making me redo dinner if she didn't like it. I don't know what to do. All the reasons for my daughter's exhaustion during her last month of pregnancy were written in the diary. How dare you take that without permission? You're nothing but a thief. And you made sure we couldn't contact her. Our daughter wanted to come home for the birth, but you made her give up and left her alone. She must have felt so helpless. I don't care about any of that. They seemed to show no sign of remorse, appearing completely oblivious to the depth of their sins. That's when a thunderous roar from my husband echoed across the room. Enough is enough. Our anger, as well as that of our relatives, was insatiable. We made them prostrate themselves right there on the spot. My son-in-law, finally realizing his situation, changed his attitude, as though flipping the palm of his hand. Okay, I get it. Just give me a break already. Oh, this isn't over. The president of the company you work for knows what you did to our daughter. You're likely to be fired. What? Why? The president and I are old classmates. It's a small world. And not just that, the neighbors know too. When I went to my daughter's house, a concerned neighbor had approached me. I told him about Karen's death and explained everything that had happened. Feel the weight of your sins and live the rest of your life in regret. There's no need to go that far. As they slumped in defeat, I relayed another important piece of information. Also, I am the beneficiary of my daughter's life insurance. What? Why is that? My son-in-law and his mother exchanged a look of utter shock. I found a piece of paper in my daughter's diary. It was a life insurance document. My daughter had changed the beneficiary to me without telling anyone. I bet it's a real bummer seeing all of your plans fall apart. Seriously, I was counting on that money. Also, I've already filed a report with the police for abandoning your responsibility to protect. It'll be quite troublesome since you've added the crime of leaving our daughter for the purpose of receiving the life insurance money. The police? Please, spare me! Forgive me! Pale and trembling, my son-in-law and his mother were prostrating themselves on the floor, but I had absolutely no intention of forgiving them. I will never forgive you. Experience the depths of that. Soon, a police car that one of our relatives had called had arrived. As they were being taken away, the two cried pitifully. Everyone present watched them with cold eyes. Afterward, I hired a lawyer to claim child support from my son-in-law and his mother. I'm praying they will be severely punished for driving our daughter to death. Regardless of the crimes they're charged with, they'll never be able to live a peaceful life as they once did. The unemployed son-in-law and his mother, who will forever be pointed at by the neighbors. The baby my daughter gave birth to is now being raised by us. The life insurance money that was paid out will all be used for the baby's life. The sadness of losing my daughter will never disappear, but there are many moments when I feel saved just by seeing this child smile. From now on, I will shower this child with the love that my daughter was unable to express.
I know our family is struggling with debt right now. If you get married, we can pay off the debt with the wedding contribution from your spouse's family. You're 18 now, old enough to marry. Marry Freddie. In other words, I was being told to marry that overweight man named Freddie. All for money. For a moment, I thought it was utterly unreasonable. But then, I realized I had only two options. Either plunge into a hell of debt by refusing to marry or spend my life with Freddie. As these were the only choices swirling in my head, I remembered something. I was willing to do anything to get out of this house. The story goes back over a decade. My name is Felicity. I grew up being treated terribly by my parents. My father died in a car accident when I was 3. He was a very kind man, but Mom apparently didn't like him very much. I have no memories of being loved by Mom, probably because I resembled my father. Mom remarried just 6 months after my father's death. According to her, she had been involved with my adoptive father even when my father was alive. Mom and my adoptive father, who had betrayed my kind father, treated me horribly. I was treated as if I didn't exist, and my pleas were always ignored. It seemed to get worse after my sister Olivia was born. Mom and my adoptive father adored Olivia. Unlike Olivia, who received all their love, I was always treated as an outcast. They did give me birthday presents every year, but they were small things like pencils or erasers, while Olivia got anything she wanted. Even at Christmas, Santa Claus never came for me. When I was little, I often cried alone, hugging my knees, thinking that Santa didn't come because I was a bad child. During those painful days, something happened. I was 7 years old. On a day when heavy rain was falling due to a hurricane, Olivia got a fever. My parents, who adored Olivia, were in a panic. My adoptive father told me to buy a sports drink for Olivia. Reluctantly, I went out in the pouring rain wearing a raincoat, but my small body struggled against the strong wind and heavy rain. Moreover, our house was in the countryside, and it took an hour to reach the nearest supermarket on my little legs. When I finally reached the supermarket, after great difficulty, I was shocked. I couldn't find the wallet I thought I had brought. I might have dropped it when the wind knocked me down. As I was about to turn back, tears welling in my eyes, I suddenly heard, "Wait a minute!" from my older brother. The high school student-like older brother said, "Are you alone? It's dangerous in this weather," in a kind voice. I burst into tears at his gentle demeanor and explained my situation. I desperately told him about my sister's fever and how my parents had sent me shopping, and the older brother seemed to understand my situation. "You don't need to look for your wallet. I'll help you with the shopping," he said, and he helped me with all my shopping. I had lost my wallet and couldn't pay a single dollar, but my older brother told me not to worry and even gave me the change. He also took me close to home in a taxi, and I felt the kindness of others for the first time in a long time. "Thank you, big brother," I said with all my heart as I got out of the taxi, and my elder brother's gentle smile was very impressive. I, who had spent such a childhood, turned 18. When I was a child, I only felt constrained by being treated differently from my sister. But now, as an 11th grader, my problem is money. Mom and adoptive father were against me going to high school in the first place. Apparently, they thought it was a waste to spend money on me. But I insisted on going to high school, and the condition they gave me was that if I wanted to go to high school and stay at home, I had to put $1,000 into the family every month. The money I earned desperately from part-time jobs was consumed by living expenses. When I became an 11th grader, I had to study for college in addition to my part-time job, and I was very busy. Mom and adoptive father probably won't pay for my college. I spent all my time working and studying to get a scholarship. One day, Olivia, who had become an 8th grader, came home triumphantly and said to our parents, "Listen, listen! I got scouted by the entertainment industry." What Olivia put on the dining table was a business card from an entertainment production company I had never heard of. Mom and adoptive father said, "Olivia is cute after all," and were delighted. "Olivia has a sparkle, so I thought something like this might happen. Keep it up, Olivia. Having a daughter as a celebrity is great. Way to go, Olivia. You're nothing like your big sister." "Well, of course, I am much, much cuter than my big sister." Olivia, raised by parents who had always looked down on me and praised Olivia, compared herself to me at every opportunity. This time, she arrogantly asked, You think so too, don't you, big sister? I replied, yes, because arguing would undoubtedly lead to trouble. Olivia was supposed to have joined an entertainment industry, but months went by without any contact. The parents, who thought it was strange that they were being charged for lessons and membership fees, found out that the entertainment agency was a fraudulent group and had already disappeared. All that was left for the parents was a debt of $20,000. The parents looked desperate, but I just calmly paid $1,000 to the family and focused on my studies. I won't spare any effort if I can get out of this house. With that in mind, I was working hard at my part-time job and studying. A few weeks later, when I got home, I heard an unfamiliar voice from the living room. Wondering what it was, I was about to go up to my room on the second floor when I heard adoptive father calling me from the living room. Wondering what it was about, I peeked into the living room and found two unfamiliar men besides adoptive father. One was a man of the same age as adoptive father, and the other was a very fat man. As I was surprised by the size of the man sweating in the air-conditioned room, adoptive father introduced the two.
This is Mr. Newell. Say hello.
Oh, nice to meet you. As I hurriedly greeted them, the two men smiled and looked at me. Mr. Newell is a well-known large-scale landowner in this area, known to everyone. Why would such people come to our house? As I was puzzled, adoptive father said something outrageous.
Mr. Newell's son, Freddie, is your fiancé. Be polite.
What? Startled, I raised my voice, and adoptive father, looking flustered, took me out into the hallway. What's going on? I asked adoptive father in a whisper, and he answered in a whisper as well.
You know we're in trouble with debt. If you marry, we can pay off the debt with the wedding contribution from their family. You're 18 now and can marry. Marry Freddie.
In other words, I had to marry that fat man Freddie for money. I thought it was utterly unreasonable for a moment, but I realized I had only two choices. Either reject the marriage and plunge into debt hell, or marry and live with Freddie. As those were the only two options swirling in my head, I remembered I was willing to do anything to get out of this house.
Are you done talking? What do you think, Felicity? Will you marry our Freddie?
Mr. Newell, who had been waiting in the living room, asked me anxiously. I answered with a smile. Yes, gladly. And so I was to marry Freddie. That very day I was told to live at Freddie's house right away and was kicked out of the house. With only my study materials, Freddie asked,
Don't you have any clothes or anything?
But I had never bought cute clothes. That's all I have, I said. Freddie lowered his eyebrows and said,
I see.
Mr. Newell, no, my father-in-law was a well-known landowner whose name I had heard. But he was a very friendly person. His car drove through a large gate and into a vast estate, and it stopped in front of a solitary house.
This is a separate house I built for Freddie when he got married. But Freddie couldn't find a spouse. I'm glad a wonderful woman like Felicity is marrying him. I live in the main house, so Felicity, you should live here with Freddie.
With just a brief explanation, my father-in-law said,
Well, I'll leave it to the young couple,
and left Freddie and me behind. Suddenly alone, I was a bit wary of Freddie, but he calmly showed me around the separate house. As he brought me to a spacious room furnished with furniture, saying,
This is your room, Felicity. This inside lock works, and if you're worried, don't hesitate to ask for a key change. I won't lay a finger on you, Felicity. I've told your parents that we'll cover your high school expenses. You should reduce your part-time job if you can. That way, you can study more. If you want to go to college, I'll let you go." I blinked at the unexpectedly good treatment. Freddie even said he had no intention of getting a marriage license and that we would have a common law marriage, so I could go to another man if I found one I liked. Far exceeding my expectations, I inadvertently asked, what is this marriage for? I feel like I'm the only one benefiting." I wondered if it was rude after I said it, but it would be troublesome if I were asked for something outrageous later. Thinking I should check just in case, I waited for Freddie's words, and he began. "I might be meddling, but..." and then answered, "I thought you might be in trouble, Felicity. Do you remember when you went shopping on the day of the hurricane when you were little? We met then, but do you remember?" I was taken aback. There's no way I wouldn't remember. I still remembered the face of the kind older brother from that time. I realized that if older brother gained weight, he might look like this. "Are you the older brother from that time? I'm sorry I didn't recognize you." "It can't be helped since I've gained a lot of weight. Stress from becoming a working adult made me eat too much. But you haven't changed, Felicity. When my dad showed me your picture and asked if I wanted to marry you, I knew right away it was you. Are you still being discriminated against and suffering like your sister?" Just like on the day of the hurricane, Freddie spoke to me kindly, and I nodded. Then Freddie smiled to reassure me. "It's okay now. You don't have to worry about money or being treated badly anymore. You can live freely in this house, okay?" Touched by Freddie's kindness, tears welled up in my eyes. In front of Freddie, who hurriedly handed me a beautiful handkerchief, I cried and cried. And from that day on, Freddie and I started living together. I spent my first ever free time studying. I was so happy to be able to study for college like this. Freddie said he didn't need living expenses, but I decided to contribute only $300 because living for free felt constraining. Since I only had to earn $300 and my allowance, I was able to significantly reduce my part-time job hours. Freddie took the initiative in doing household chores, and when I was doing them, he would kindly say, "You can go study," and take over for me. In the happiest days of my life, Freddie and I gradually grew closer. We spent our days like an ordinary married couple, laughing together while watching variety shows and going out on holidays. A few months later, I was leading a calm life when I received a phone call from my adoptive father. What could he want now, after never worrying about me and leaving me alone all this time? I picked up the phone with a bad feeling. "Hello? Felicity, is that you? Mom's in serious trouble." I was taken aback by adoptive father's loud voice as soon as I answered the phone. According to adoptive father, Mom had fallen sick and needed immediate surgery, so he was calling me to ask to transfer $10,000 to a specified account. Mom had neglected me since childhood, but she was still my mom. Facing a life-threatening situation, I couldn't just ignore her. What happened all of a sudden? Which hospital and what kind of illness? When I asked out of concern, adoptive father hesitated, saying, Well, it's the hospital, but..." I began to feel something was off, as adoptive father suddenly became flustered. He couldn't even name the disease, which was clearly suspicious. "You're lying, aren't you? Enough. Don't call me for such nonsense." "Wait,
Okay, I admit it. I lied. The truth is, I had an accident recently, and I'm being billed $10,000. According to adoptive father, he had crashed his car the other day, and the person he hit was a scary guy. He was now being billed $10,000 for repairs and medical expenses, and he claimed he couldn't pay. My irritation with him grew. You're probably lying again. It's true this time. Please, Felicity, ask Freddie to transfer the $10,000. You're all we have left. I snapped at adoptive father's desperate plea. Don't mess with me. I can't believe you called after so long just to ask for money. Neither you nor Mom ever cared about me. Not even once. And now you want me to help you? That's too convenient. No matter what you say, I have no intention of transferring the money. Goodbye. Ignoring adoptive father's plea to wait, I hung up the phone and blocked the numbers of adoptive father, Mom, and Olivia. A few weeks later, as I happened to pass by my family's house, I noticed it was vacant. A gossip-loving neighbor lady approached me, and from her, I learned that the story about hitting a scary guy's car was true. According to the neighbor lady, my parents and Olivia had secretly packed their bags and left the house at night. They must have fled and are likely living a hidden life now. Living in fear must be incredibly stifling. Thinking about it, I felt a sense of relief deep in my heart. Meanwhile, I was living happy days. I had completely fallen in love with Freddie. Though Freddie, who was 10 years older than me, was often hesitant about dating me. My persistent confessions led to a decision to start dating once I graduated from high school. Freddie even took time off work to attend my high school graduation ceremony. As he accompanied me in my eating and exercise habits, Freddie slimmed down to his original figure and transformed into a handsome man. My friends were envious when I proudly introduced him as my boyfriend. After my high school graduation, Freddie and I submitted our marriage registration to officially get married. When I said I wanted to marry, Freddie nodded in agreement, so we decided to submit the marriage registration. It would take a little time for the marriage certificate to be issued, but now we were officially a married couple, not just in a common law marriage. On the way home from the city hall, we held hands for the first time. I laughed at Freddie's adorable shyness, and he said, "Now that you're my wife, Felicity, you can't be swayed by any handsome boys you meet in college." I thought I was the only one in love, but it seemed Freddie loved me very much too. I found it so ticklish that I burst into laughter. There's no way that could happen. Out of all the people I've met, Freddie is the most handsome.
I'm Elsie, a 26-year-old newlywed. My husband, Harrison, is 30. He has a solid job at a well-known company. We met when I was working at a department store, and Harrison, a client of the store, took an interest in me. We live close to my in-laws and have frequent interactions with them. I'd say we get along pretty well. Sure, there's some friction with my mother-in-law, Mira, but we manage. My father-in-law, Elliot, is a quiet guy. He's into saving and investing, and he's always reading the financial news. I grew up near the mountains, spending my childhood running around my grandpa's property. I thought I became pretty average after moving to the city for college. Yet my love for the outdoors persists. Nowadays, I prefer spending time in nature over wandering around town. These days, I've mellowed out as Harrison's wife. Sometimes I miss the mountains back home, so I watch camping videos on YouTube to soothe my soul. One day, I got a call from home. It had been a while, so Harrison and I decided it was a good time to visit. My hometown is in a remote area, so we had to drive for about 4 hours. Surrounded by mountains on both sides, it's a place that's inconvenient in many ways. Frankly, it's the countryside. My grandpa owns both fields and mountains. My dad mainly manages the fields, while my grandpa takes care of the rest. As a kid, I adored my grandpa and always looked forward to going to the mountains with him. But recently, he's aged and stopped going. When we arrived, my grandpa greeted us.
"Wow, Elsie.
Hey, Grandpa. Long time no see. How have you been?
I'm still kicking. Won't kick the bucket until I see your kids." "Good to see you again, sir."
Harrison finally chimed in, after not getting a word in.
"Ah, Harrison, how have you been?"
My grandpa greeted him with his rugged, wrinkled face and held my hand in his strong grip. It felt really warm. Then, after a heartfelt dinner, my dad began to talk as we sipped some drinks.
"The reason I called you all here is to talk about Grandpa's inheritance."
Inheritance? Isn't Grandpa still well? All I asked, my grandfather, who was sipping his wine, responded.
"Well, I'm turning 80 this year. You never know what might happen. I want to share my thoughts before I start losing my mind."
Don't talk like that. You're still lively.
"I think so too."
My dad chuckled, pulling out a piece of paper.
"But the old man is pretty stubborn. Once he gets an idea, it's hard to change his mind. It's not really an inheritance. It's more like a gift while he's still alive. Anyway, my brother and I will continue to manage the farm as we always have."
Pointing out a part of the document, my dad continued.
"Grandpa wants to leave you that mountain." "What? Really, Grandpa?"
Harrison leaned in as he spoke. Why are you chiming in? I asked.
Sorry, it just caught my interest."
Look, I haven't thought of anything right now, and there's nothing I can do with it.
Don't worry about taking care of the mountain. I'll leave that to the experts. In return, I'll just take some fish and mushrooms we find up there. That's fair, right?"
Dad says. Sure, but make sure to send me some mushrooms.
"All right, it's settled then. We'll take it from here."
Fine by me. Where's Harrison?
"He's on the phone outside."
Who's he talking to? Maybe his family. It doesn't matter. So I inherited the mountain from my grandfather. Later, Harrison was acting oddly cheerful, grinning in a strange way. That expression, it looked like he was scheming something. I figured he wouldn't answer anyway, so I let it be. When I got home, there was a dinner invitation from my in-laws. Thinking how unusual this was, I headed to the restaurant they specified. I met up with Harrison at the restaurant, and soon after my in-laws arrived. For some reason, Harrison and my in-laws seemed to be in a really good mood. Elsie, was everyone back home doing well? She asked. Yes, my parents and grandfather are fine. That's good to hear. Eventually, Elliot, who had become noticeably tipsy, spoke to me.
"So, I heard from Harrison."
Yes, what is it?
"You received a gift from your grandfather while he's still alive."
Well, yes. My grandpa wanted to sort things out while he was still alive, to avoid any disputes later.
"Your grandpa sounds like a wise man. I heard you inherited some land. Is it big?"
It's not particularly grand, but it has a beautiful stream. You can find trout and char there.
"Nice. So, what are you planning to do with it?"
Honestly, I hadn't thought of anything yet.
"What a waste. You could make some good money off it, you know?"
Elliot said with a sleazy grin. The attitude ticked me off a bit. That land is a place filled with memories of my grandfather and me. I don't want to use it just to make money.
"Oh, don't worry. We're not thinking about that. But you do realize that since you inherited it, it's also mine, right?"
Harrison said something unexpected. What do you mean?
"Well, the land belongs to both of us. Since we're married, it's joint property."
Don't make decisions without asking me.
"But we're a couple, aren't we? We live off the money I earn, so it's the same thing."
That's right. What belongs to the wife also belongs to the husband.
Exactly. You're my wife, so we've both inherited this land. You get it, right?
The in-laws tried to gang up on me again, this time with everyone involved. After dinner, my in-laws even followed us home, and we all had a casual drink. My in-laws and Harrison seemed to be having an even better time. I called it a night pretty early, but it seemed like my in-laws and Harrison stayed up chatting late into the night. Then, Elliot approached me for advice again. He said he was introduced to a real estate developer through a contact and had a conversation with him.
Just leave it to me,
he said proudly. Harrison added,
preliminary estimates suggest it's worth billions. Just trust me with it.
What are you doing without asking me?
Shut up. You're my wife. What's yours is ours. You'll thank me for this.
That's right. A good wife listens to her husband. If this works out, we all benefit. It's a win-win. I couldn't believe it. They were all blinded by greed. Until we talked about my grandfather's legacy, everything was fine. But everyone changed after hearing about the mountain. And they all started having these discussions without me. I spent my days filled with anxiety. Then one day, at Elliot's suggestion, we decided to go check out some mountains. We booked a nearby hotel, although the pretext was a family trip. It was actually an inspection. It's lovely, even more expensive than I thought.
Could probably sell it to a resort developer, build some villas and hotels, and we'll make a killing.
Mira and Harrison started talking nonsense.
Should we try a family camping trip?
And then, with hands on his hips, Elliot declared,
all right, this will be our camping ground. Elsie, you'll work here as staff. And no days off, of course.
Honestly, it's a suitable place for a campsite. The spot has good drainage and faces the south. It's close to a beautiful stream, perfect for family outings. The in-laws seemed pleased with the situation. Once we got home, a call was made to the developers right away. After hanging up, Elliot said,
they're going to check out the site next week. They even suggested turning it into a vacation home area or a members-only resort hotel. This is going to be fun.
That sounds lovely. Can we use the hotel and stuff?
Of course, we'd be the owners. This could be our graceful retirement. In that case, I might manage the hotel. Elsie could manage the campground.
Campground manager?
Yeah, she's family. She can work for free and no days off.
You can't be serious.
What are you talking about? Our family is doing all this for you. It's only natural you work too. And you'd be working in the mountains, which you love.
Harrison laughed at his own comment. I couldn't help but join in on the in-laws conversation. Just then, I received a message from an old college senior.
Hey, long time no see. How are you?
Vernon. Vernon is a mountain climbing enthusiast who spent 2 years studying abroad as a member of a mountaineering club. Now he's taken that experience and landed a job at an outdoor gear manufacturing company. He's still climbing mountains.
You don't seem too happy. What's going on?
I explained the situation.
I see. Your husband's family seems to be blinded by money.
Yeah, it feels like they're all about making money off my mountain. I'm even thinking about divorce at this point.
Leave it to us. Let's hold a strategy meeting. You free?
Nobody pays attention to me, so I'm free to go out alone.
All right, I'll get in touch with the others. Cheer up, okay?
Talking to Vernon lifted my spirits a bit. Though I don't know what he's planning, he'll probably help me out. The in-laws, still excited about the mountain, wanted to go again. Reluctantly, I drove everyone to the mountain. We ventured deeper into the forest than last time. Finally, we reached the mountain entrance and got out of the car.
Hey, why is there a shrine here? Is it significant?
Harrison noticed a small shrine at the mountain entrance. Yes, it's a deity of the mountain, a branch shrine established by my ancestors. I pray there before entering and leaving the mountain.
That's quaint for modern times.
It's just a way to show gratitude and seek permission from the gods.
Psst, nonsense.
This mountain provides us with mushrooms and river fish because of this deity.
That's just superstition. We're tearing down this tiny shrine when we build the campground.
Absolutely not. We've cherished and protected it.
I don't believe in gods or old tales,
Harrison said, kicking the shrine. What are you doing? You'll be cursed.
Let them curse me if they can. Ha ha ha,
he said, and quickly entered the mountain. As usual, I put my hands together and prayed.
Elsie, you should head back first. There's just too much complaining. We can't get anything done,
Elliot said, his face turning red with anger.
Fine, go away. You're such a bother.
Even after Harrison told me that, I decided to go home alone. I descended the mountain and got a local friend to drive me to the nearest train station. Suddenly, I noticed dark clouds rolling over the mountain. Looks like it might rain. Will it be okay? I rode the train alone and got home. When I got home, there was a message from Harrison online.
Where are you? I need help.
What happened?
I got a flat tire on the way back. My car won't move.
Well, looks like karma got you. I replied, and he said,
Don't say that. Help me.
I'll find the auto repair shop my parents use. I arranged for a tow truck from that shop. Feeling slightly vindicated, I texted back, Tough break, hang in there. After a while, he got back to me. Thanks to the tow truck, he was able to get moving. But it took time. Now he had to hurry back on the freeway. He spent quite a bit on the tow truck and car inspection. I couldn't help but laugh. After dinner, while relaxing, my line rang. It was Harrison. He got caught speeding on the freeway by an unmarked police car and was fined $180 for going 28 miles per hour over the speed limit. See, karma strikes again. That's what you get for disrespecting the mountain gods. I burst out laughing. For a while, my in-laws acted like adults, but soon they started excluding me from their conversations. Seems like they're still plotting to make a fortune off that mountain. Elliot was discussing resort development and campground operations around that mountain with a realtor. However, quite a bit of upfront investment is needed to develop the uneven forest land.
It's all about starting, borrowing a little money. It's no big deal.
Elliot seemed a bit shaky, as if he'd completely forgotten about the initial costs. My in-laws started scrambling to secure funds. It seems they are even talking to sketchy loan sharks. Will they be okay? I thought of showing the charm of the mountain to my in-laws to make them reconsider the resort development. Elliot, that mountain offers various pleasures. It's mushroom season now. Want to go again? Elliot pondered. To give him a nudge, I continued. How about it? The flickering bonfire in the night, the refreshing morning air, the aroma of coffee wafting around. It's a perfect setting for you, Elliot.
You think so? I'm quite particular about coffee, you know, very picky about its taste.
Picky, but he only likes grocery store coffee. I can already see you, rugged yet sophisticated Elliot, savoring coffee in the morning mountain air.
Now that you mention it, I was once told that I looked like a model for men's cosmetics. Maybe I should grow a beard. Mandem.
Elliot stroked his chin as he said that. It must be some old commercial I'm not aware of. Okay then, I'll look forward to a favorable answer.
Leave it to me.
Great, now Elliot is getting in the mood. What an easy mark. And so, we decided to go on an overnight camping trip. Fortunately, the weather was good, and we arrived at the mountain before noon. We brought 2 tents, one for my in-laws and one for me. The in-laws' tent wasn't secured well, no stakes hammered in properly, and they didn't even put up the rainfly. I warned them, but they shrugged it off. It's just one night. It'll be fine. I figured they might learn better from experience, so I stopped harping on it. I set up my tent on a slope that looked like it drained well. For dinner, I kept it simple with steak. After eating, I cleaned up and retreated to my own tent. I drank some canned beer and turned in early while the in-laws enjoyed a bonfire. Morning came. Even in summer, the mountain air had a chill. I started to prep some coffee, soaking in the fresh mountain morning. I could still hear snores coming from my in-laws' tent. Seems they had fun late into the night. Eventually, they crawled out of their tent. "Good morning. Care for some coffee?" I looked up and was shocked beyond words. What? What happened to you guys? Their faces were swollen and deformed, as if they'd been bitten by a swarm of insects.
Forgot to zip up the tent last night. Woke up like this,
Elliot explained, scratching his face. "It itches so much I can't stand it. Can we do something?" Mira whined, also scratching.
Well, I didn't expect to wake up like this after a night of great drinks and mushrooms,
Harrison added, scratching his belly. "Got any medicine?"
Nope, don't have it.
Looks like he really went to town scratching an itch. There's even some blood seeping through in spots. I took them to my parents' home for treatment. We always had effective but stingy ointment for bug bites. I applied ointment to the three, but Elliot was writhing. "Ah, that spot! Ouch, it stings!" Mira screamed, and Harrison shed tears. Seems like this is what people mean by agonizing cries. Well, it's a price for underestimating nature. I generously applied more ointment on them. The wrath of the mountain god seemed to linger. Around this time, I got a call from my uncle on my father's side.
Actually, I can't keep up with the field I inherited from my father, and I'm thinking of letting it go.
He paused and said,
That land is so close to your mountain. How about you take care of it along with the mountain? You're free to use it as you wish. What do you think? Not a bad deal, huh?
I was immediately convinced. The field has good sunlight and drainage, but neglect would turn it into a wasteland. So I thought of setting up a campground there, separate from my in-laws' plan. When I talked to Vernon, he assured me it would be perfect for a campsite. Meanwhile, my in-laws were struggling with their previous mountain project due to lack of funds. They wanted me to be the campground manager, but I had been refusing.
You were supposed to manage it. We discussed this.
Harrison was getting irritated by my stubbornness. No, I won't work here. It was time. I told Harrison about my own plans. I'm going to set up my own campsite.
What? Are you serious?
An uncle of mine gave me some land, and I'll turn it into a campsite. I even have the support of an outdoor goods manufacturer. And the plan's already getting good reviews.
Do as you wish. We'll proceed with our own plans. Yours will fail soon enough. Ha ha ha.
Harrison stormed out, almost like a villain in a story. Then one day, I got a call from a senior colleague.
Hey, that thing you asked for? Consider it done. You can relax now.
Really? Thank you so much. And so my campsite plan was set into motion. Vernon gave me all sorts of advice, and we came up with a design that prioritized convenience. We used the elevation differences to add steps between plots, so people wouldn't be in direct eye contact. Each plot had a parking space, making it easy to unload, even with lots of gear. The admin building had a small convenience store and offers shower rooms. These amenities are free for guests to use. Finally, I decided to formally inform my in-laws. I told Harrison and my in-laws that I had something important to discuss and invited them over. Regarding the mountain and the campsite.
Oh, finally made up your mind. You'll manage the campsite for us.
Elliot seemed genuinely happy. Of course, a daughter-in-law is a member of the family, and it's only natural that you'd agree, Mira said smugly.
We've been waiting for Elsie to say that. Now we can join the ranks of the rich elite. Ha ha ha.
Harrison is grinning from ear to ear. Looking at my lovely, overly cheerful in-laws, I let out a sigh. I hate to burst your bubble, but that's not happening. What? All three in-laws gasped in disbelief. Listen, the development of that mountain can't go forward. Actually, it's off the table. My words left my in-laws speechless, their mouths wide open. After a moment of silence, Harrison breaks in.
What does that mean?
I'm glad he asked. The area has been incorporated into a national park, so no development can happen.
What?
A second harmonious gasp from the family. Another round of silence follows. This time Elliot speaks up.
So what does that mean for us? We can't make any money?
Yeah, what about our retirement? My in-laws clamor, but I don't let it bother me. Harrison chimes in.
I was going to quit my job at the end of this month to build a campground on that mountain and become the boss there.
It can't be helped. It was the government's decision.
So did the government pay you? They bought it, right?
Yes, I received a reasonable amount, but it's mine.
What are you talking about? You're part of this family. That money should be ours.
Elliot stands up, clearly agitated. No, even though we're married, the assets I inherited are mine alone, not yours.
That's it. We're getting a divorce.
Harrison throws down his trump card, just as I expected. Fine, if that's what you want. I don't want to be a part of this greedy family either.
Fine, I'm moving back to my parents' house, starting today.
Sure, you have no other choice. After all, this house is in my name, bought by my parents. You'll be the one leaving if we divorce.
Shut up. Your campground will fail, and you'll regret this.
Do whatever you like. I'll also be going back to my parents' house after sorting things here.
Fine, have it your way.
So I completed the divorce proceedings, organized my home, and returned to my parents' house. During the division of assets in the divorce, it seemed Harrison had already invested even my share in his campground plan, complicating the split. My in-laws, already deep into their plans, had no choice but to proceed. A real estate agent suggested another piece of land for their campground. Eventually, their campground opened. It was located in the mountains and lacked adequate facilities, making it inconvenient for transporting gear from the far-off parking area. The equipment rentals were also priced high, and the sites were merely separated by ropes, offering no privacy. Honestly, it was a poorly designed facility, and soon enough the results showed. As expected, my in-laws' campground struggled due to its poor conditions and inconvenience, garnering almost no repeat customers. The management was so lax that even the tent sites were overgrown with grass. The landlord's ruthless and profit-driven ways backfired. The internet wasn't kind, and he went bankrupt before long. Word has it, my in-laws are now knee-deep in debt. To pay off those debts, they had to sell their family home and are now living and working in a hotel in the countryside. Then my campground opened. It's been a hit, with lots of repeat visitors. Even in the off-season, we're never short on guests. Once it appeared in the TV drama about high school girls enjoying camping, it became a pilgrimage site for fans, and the customer base surged. These days, I'm keeping busy as the campground manager. Lately, there are a lot of families, but solo camping is on the rise too. I never really noticed, but apparently this place is known for its clear, starry skies. Nestled in my favorite hammock, sipping on my go-to hot whiskey, I often catch sight of a shooting star against the night sky.
Hey there, still as unglamorous as ever, huh? Here, brought you some gifts. Smoked mushrooms and trout my buddy sent over. They're good.
Thanks as always, but calling me unglamorous is a bit harsh. It's Vernon, who's been very supportive lately. He's been coming around to the campground, dropping off various treats. I never used to think he was cool, but lately, I've started to see him in a new light. Since he seems to have taken a liking to me too, maybe I'll invite him camping next time. As I ponder that, a shooting star crosses the sky. I instinctively put my hands together in a quick prayer. What I wished for is, of course, a secret, but somehow it feels like a big dream is about to come true.
No, you're wrong. That's not it. You don't understand.
Reminds me of lyrics from a song I heard once. I shift my gaze back to the man standing before me, crying and apologizing. It's embarrassing that this sorry man is my husband. Well, that ends today. It's fine. It's fine. You look well. We'll get through this. My name is Cammie. I'm a 27-year-old office worker. I've been friends with my colleagues, Patrick and Allison, since we started working at the same company. We often hung out privately, but when Allison got a boyfriend, it was usually just Patrick and me. I always saw Patrick as just a good male friend. He saw things differently, though, and took me by surprise when he confessed his feelings for me. That confession made me start seeing him as more than a friend.
Will you go out with me on a trial basis?
Impulsive Patrick caught me off guard, and we started dating. Allison teased us, saying, "Really? Now?" But Patrick turned out to be a very serious guy who treasured me. Over time, I came to feel the same way about him. A few months into our relationship, Allison announced she was marrying her longtime boyfriend and graciously asked me to give a wedding speech. "Cammy, you're next." Sure enough, the following year, Patrick and I decided to get married. Of course, I asked Allison to give a speech. Work was going well, and I was thrilled at the thought of spending the rest of my life with the man I loved. I even thought I was the happiest person in the world. How naive I was. A few months after marrying Patrick, I found out I was pregnant.
"Hello, can you hear me?"
Patrick would say as he touched my belly. "I don't think the baby can hear you yet." That happy conversation lasted only the first 2 weeks. Ugh, I feel sick. Is this morning sickness? Soon after, I was struck with intense nausea. Worse, I experienced both vomiting and eating types of morning sickness. I felt sick, so I ate. Then I felt sick because I ate, in a never-ending cycle. The terrifying part about morning sickness is that there's no end in sight. My phone search history was flooded with questions like, when does morning sickness end? Comfortable positions for morning sickness. Will morning sickness last until delivery? In moments like these, I'd reassure myself daily, saying, "This too is proof the baby is growing. It'll end someday. It'll end." Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, in walks Patrick, declaring,
"I'm home. Hey, Cammy, down with morning sickness again?"
Hardly the words you'd expect from a man whose wife is carrying his child. No, it's not again. I've been dealing with morning sickness constantly. Despite the effort it took to speak, Patrick blurted out,
"All right, whatever. What's for dinner?"
I finally lost it. Don't you see? I've had morning sickness all day. Making dinner was out of the question. I raised my voice. Don't irritate a pregnant woman this much.
"Women change after marriage," they say, and it's true. You've been irritable lately, Cammy. All we've had are ready-made meals and takeout. You used to take care of yourself."
He said that with a look of disdain. To add insult to injury,
"Look at Allison's social media. She cooks all these elaborate dishes every day. I'm so jealous."
What? Don't compare a housewife with no kids to a full-time pregnant woman with morning sickness. I was too drained to argue, muttering, "Whatever, I'm going to bed," as tears flowed uncontrollably. Patrick had become rather careless in how he treated me since we got married. Once you've got it, you don't need to work for it anymore, they say. Patrick was a prime example. Thoughts of divorce had crossed my mind, weighed down by financial worries and the hope that maybe Patrick would change when our child arrived. My mental state was in shambles. Divorce takes a toll, and for someone pregnant, it's particularly harsh. Despite my struggles, our baby was growing healthily inside of me. That was the only thing keeping me going. We had a huge fight once, and I told him, "I'm going back to my parents' house." The reason? He said I was careless with housework. Think about it. Patrick and I leave and return home at the same time. On top of that, I'm pregnant. Yet Patrick says,
"It's great coming home and having dinner ready."
This infuriated me, leading to an argument. Most household chores fall on me anyway. Patrick's contribution is taking out the trash, I've gathered. I've told him to pitch in more, but he responded, Nah, I'm not good with that stuff. Then go back to your parents' house. Angry and at a loss for words, Patrick picked up his phone and started talking to someone. After a while, he handed me his phone with a smug look on his face. Here, take it. It's for you. I really didn't want to talk to the person on the other end, but she insisted. I grabbed the phone and was immediately shouted at. What do you mean, kicking my son out of the house? The caller was Patrick's mom, my mother-in-law, Stella. I can't stand her. Actually, I hate her. Most people would be shocked if they got yelled at like this, but not me. I told Patrick to leave because he said I couldn't go back to my own family's house. What's wrong with that? Why should Patrick be the one to leave? Fed up, I retorted. Is there any reason besides me not wanting to be with him? And why are parents getting involved in an adult fight anyway? Then I hung up on her. It's been like this since we got married. I try to keep the peace during family events, but Stella plays the victim, saying things like, My son's wife is so rude. I'm always the one getting hurt. As a result, I've been labeled the strict wife behind my back. Stella and I probably clash because we're too similar. We both say what we're thinking. Raised the youngest of all brothers, I turned out to be a strong-minded woman. And of course, Stella dislikes me for it, calling me unladylike and cheeky. I don't care what she thinks, but talking to her drains me, which is tough on my pregnant body. I seem to have drawn the short straw when it comes to both my husband and mother-in-law. I've had enough, I thought. Patrick knows how I am, so whenever there's trouble, he sends Stella to deal with me. Like children fighting, I thought to myself. Then one day, my morning sickness finally stopped. I don't feel sick anymore, thank God. But then, foolish Patrick said, Now, you can take care of the house. Experience is a cruel teacher, and I'd learned not to expect anything from him. The upside, I was less annoyed. I hadn't yet realized that my clueless husband would do something absurd after someone had said, Criticism is the best form of flattery. As I got further along in my pregnancy, my belly grew larger, and I started experiencing leg cramps and frequent bathroom trips. Yet every kick I felt filled me with joy. Though I had some bouts of morning sickness in my third trimester, they were mild compared to the first half. With the support of my colleagues, I managed to work until I went on maternity leave. I wasn't lucky with my in-laws, but I'm truly grateful to everyone at work. We'll definitely come see you once the baby is born and things settle down. Can't wait to hold little Cammy, my colleague said, which made me happy. I didn't trust Patrick and had no intention of relying on my in-laws, so I decided to give birth at my parents' house, a 2-hour drive away. My parents, eager for their first grandchild, couldn't wait for the arrival. My parents have a strong relationship. My dad, being strict, was tough on us siblings, but also showered us with praise when deserved. Even after years of marriage, he adored my mom. When she stumbled slightly on a step, he'd ask, Are you okay? Any injuries? That's probably what you'd call a devoted husband. Even if Mom would say, Oh, stop it. You're embarrassing me. She actually cherished it. So, Patrick, we'll be looking after Cammy for a while. Make sure you step up after. My dad said as he came to pick me up, since the day was drawing near for the birth. Of course, you can count on me for anything at home. Thank you for worrying about me too, Patrick responded. My dad looked puzzled. I felt embarrassed. What does he mean? You can count on me for anything at home. Who cares about your well-being? You should be concerned about your wife and the child that's about to be born. I felt like my face was on fire from shame. If Patrick had one redeeming quality, it would be his ability to get along with anyone. My stern-faced dad is often misunderstood, but Patrick won him over with his unyielding cheerfulness the first time they met. I was glad that he got along well with my family. On the way to my parents' house, Dad hesitated. Patrick is. Never mind. Dad, I know what you wanted to say. Patrick is an idiot, right? Thinking of spending some time away from Patrick, the source of my worries, I felt I could go into labor with peace of mind. As it turned out, our baby was breech, as revealed in the latest checkup. We tried various maneuvers to turn the baby, but it didn't work. A cesarean section was inevitable. "They're going to cut me open," I said. I had been lucky to live a healthy life thus far. While a C-section is still childbirth, it's also surgery. When I let out a sigh of fear, Mom said, "You're about to be a mother, you know. And Cammie, you were breech too, and delivered via C-section." I was scared, but the moment you were born and cried, all the fear disappeared. She patted my shoulder reassuringly. A mother's love knows no bounds. In the end, my baby remained breech, so I gave birth to a healthy girl via C-section. I finally get to meet you. All the hardships I'd experienced during pregnancy hit me all at once, and I burst into tears. My parents, who had been waiting, cheered. "You did great." "Well done." They looked at the baby and couldn't stop saying how cute she was. My dad was even more emotional than me. By the way, Patrick wasn't there. I told him not to come. It may sound like I'm the bad guy, but as soon as a C-section was scheduled, I did inform Patrick.
"Do I really need to be there right now? Axel and the others are here too, you know."
He said something outrageous. I was so shocked, I told him not to come and hung up. I informed the hospital that my husband might not come, and true to form, Patrick didn't show up. After I was discharged, I went back to my parents' house, where they helped me focus on childcare. They even took care of the birth registration. And Patrick? Not a single message since the baby was born. Stella did call to say, "Bring the baby over soon." "I'll come if I can," I said, and hung up. About 2 weeks after giving birth, the doorbell rang late at night. "Who could that be?" said Mom, and after a chat with the visitor, they both came into the living room.
"Cammie, long time no see. Wow, so this is my kid. She's so tiny."
Patrick had come unannounced after work. It was 9 p.m. Angie, who had just fallen asleep, woke up due to Patrick's loud voice. Patrick cheerfully said to me, who was calming down the baby,
"Wow, you need to keep up, Cammie."
My mom stood behind him, glaring. "What are you doing here at this hour without notice? Don't you think it's rude?" And to that, Patrick replied,
"Mommy's as scary as ever,"
without even trying to soothe the crying Angie. This guy, I wanted to kick him out right then. But then Patrick said something even more outrageous.
"Cammie, let's go home."
"What?" I was embarrassed to hear the unexpected words, but my voice came out in a stupid voice.
"I thought I'd check and see how you were doing, and you look fine. Let's go."
When I was too dumbfounded to respond, he said,
"I mean, the house is a mess. I'm not good at cleaning up, so could you take care of it, please?"
Clasping his hands in front of me as if praying. From behind me, a low voice said,
"Hey." "Oh, sorry for intruding, Axel. I came to pick up Cammie and Angie. Thanks for looking after them."
Patrick was grinning, the only one in the room doing so. Doesn't he get it?
"They say a mother's love knows no bounds, but you're up and about after a C-section. Are you a Japanese samurai or what? Just kidding, haha."
Man, I wish he'd stop talking already. Just as I thought that, looking at Dad's face, he finally seemed to realize he'd crossed the line.
Come on. Why the mean look? Axel and I are buddies, right?"
he tries to say.
"You think you can treat my daughter, who I brought into this world, like this? Stop making a fool out of her. Get out now."
Dad's words echoed with authority. Dad had laid down the law. After his words, I turned to Patrick and said, "Patrick, I'm divorcing you." They say the resentment of pregnancy and childbirth lasts a lifetime, but you've been a problem long before that. I had decided to divorce him once the baby was born. I even considered doing it before the birth. But a small part of me believed that seeing the baby would bring back the Patrick I once knew. In the end, Patrick only thinks about himself. I should have left him sooner. As long as you pay up, that's all I care about. Staring down Patrick, I said this. He retorted,
I'll never agree to a divorce. I'm reporting this to Mom.
Then he stormed off. He's such a child, to the very end. As Patrick was leaving, Mom was yelling at him to go home faster. A few days later, I called Patrick.
Hello, Cammy? I said those things, but I don't want to break up.
Patrick tried to sound humble, but of course I was unmoved. In the background, I heard something move. What's that noise? Is someone there? At my words, Patrick's voice quivered.
Sorry. Actually, I'm dog-sitting for a friend. You know, I love dogs.
Sounds like a big dog. Almost sounds like it can talk. Let me guess the name. Allison? When I said this, Patrick was clearly shaken. The baby monitor you bought, even though I always said I didn't need it, being tech-averse as I am, surely came in handy. As I said this, Patrick scrambled to turn off the monitor, but it was too late. Wow, this thing is easy to operate. Even has a recording function. Just great. I said this with a chuckle. The room, tidied up for giving birth at my parents' house, now looked like a garbage dump. Captured several times on camera were the two of them, huddling on the dirty sofa like a newly dating couple. Who would have thought you could feel romantic in such a messy room? Both of them must have the intelligence of monkeys. Actually, that's insulting to monkeys. I suspected he was having an affair, but I never thought it would be with Allison. No wonder he's always going on about Allison. Just thinking that the two of them have been deceiving me this whole time makes my blood boil. Patrick suddenly went silent. Then Allison switched on the line, crying. Hello, Cammy? It's me, Allison. Sorry, there's nothing between Patrick and me. We were just talking about you, that's all. What a lie. Fine, Allison. Keep your lies to social media. That shut her up. Allison, now a housewife, posts on social media almost daily. Pictures of fancy meals that were clearly takeout from expensive restaurants. Anyone could see right through it. Colleagues felt sorry seeing her posts, but I considered her a friend, so I never joined in. I thought you were a dear friend, Allison. Hearing my sad tone, she replied, I'm sorry. It was just a fling with Patrick. I still want to be friends with you, Cammy. Yeah, oops. I accidentally sent a video of you two to Zeph because I'm not tech savvy. I said it cheerfully and hung up. As if I would forgive them. May they both go to hell. I had work connections with Allison's husband, Zeph, so I knew how to reach him. He contacted me right away, grateful for the evidence, and said they'd been suspecting an affair too.
We will definitely take action,
he assured. Allison, despite her glamorous appearance, was disastrous at housework. Zeph suggested she work for a change of pace, to which she responded, That's not really for me. I chuckled at the irony. Now that I think of it, Allison's workspace was always messy. No wonder she's okay with a room like that. Then I immediately reached out to a certain individual. The person on the other end of the line was furious. Eventually, I was summoned to my in-laws' house. My parents offered to come along, but I asked them to look after my daughter and went alone. I arrived and rang the doorbell. Stella opened the door with a stern look. Come in, she said. Inside, I saw my usually quiet father-in-law, Lloyd, and Patrick, who had a triumphant expression for some reason. Looks like Stella is going to scold me again, I thought. What an idiot. Stella broke the silence. Patrick, you told me the reason for the divorce was that Cammy had changed her mind. Is it true that you had an affair? Patrick gave me a look as if I'd spilled the beans.
Well, you see, it was just a fling. It's over now.
He spoke, eyes down, in a subdued voice. Who could have guessed it would turn out like this? Stella looked visibly annoyed. The next second,
You idiotic son!
Stella slapped Patrick hard across the face. For a moment, he looked stunned, hand on his cheek, staring at Stella.
I hate cheating men more than anything in the world.
Seems like Patrick found Stella's unprecedented anger scary. He turned to Lloyd for help, who coldly said,
Don't look at me. You brought this on yourself. Suffer the consequences.
Lloyd himself was shaking at the sight of Stella's fury. The person I contacted was Stella. I knew she had a severe disdain for infidelity. During a death anniversary at our parents-in-law's home, the subject of cheating came up among family members. Only Stella reacted with an extraordinary level of anger. Everyone thought, she must have been cheated on before. Patrick, ever since I got pregnant, you've only cared about yourself. Must have been busy cheating, I guess. Stella slapped Patrick again upon hearing those words. Realizing he was cornered, Patrick sobbed and said,
No, that's not it. I swear it's not.
But of course, I had no intention of forgiving him. Let him suffer. When the topic of alimony and child support came up, he pleaded.
I have no money, Cammy. Please forgive me.
I looked at him and said, It's all right. You look well. You'll figure it out. I threw back the same insensitive words he had said to me 2 weeks after childbirth, telling me to come home and clean the dirty house. Upon hearing this, Patrick burst into tears again. After that, I reported Patrick's actions to his company. They promised appropriate action, but not wanting him to lose his job and default on child support, I had him transferred to a notoriously tough labor-intensive subsidiary. His parents covered the compensation. Back at his parents' house, Patrick faced harsh treatment, especially from Stella, who had always been soft on him. It served him right. As for Allison, his affair partner, she got a divorce as well. Her reason for cheating with Patrick was resentment over my constant praise at work. Made no sense. After this, Allison was disowned by her family. I can't pay. I have no money, she shamelessly said when asked about compensation. Like that was an option. She's now working desperately to continue paying me and Zeph. My life's less glamorous now, but I couldn't care less about a friend like her. As for me, thanks to my parents' support, my daughter Angie is growing up fine. My childcare leave is about to end, and my parents decided to move closer to my workplace. We just want to be closer to Angie. But I know it's because they're worried about me. And honestly, I couldn't be more grateful. Things have been tough, but I'm committed to raising my daughter well as a single mother.
It had been a while since Eddie, my father-in-law, moved into a retirement community. One night, Jimmy, my husband, spoke up, which was rare. If we don't have to take care of Dad anymore, you're useless to me. I'm leaving. Ah, so that's what this is about. You want a divorce? Jimmy nods silently. I had been putting up with Jimmy's terrible behavior ever since he blamed our infertility on me. I decided to accept the divorce. I'll give you all the money we've saved together for your poor self. With that, Jimmy left and moved back to his parents' home. After the divorce was finalized, I got a call from my ex-husband Jimmy. You were planning to set me up, weren't you? At this point, he had lost his home, savings, and job. My name is Nina Dowell. I'm almost 35. I married Jimmy, my childhood friend who is a year younger than me, 10 years ago. We're currently renting an apartment and living together. We grew up in the same neighborhood and played together since kindergarten. Jimmy's family was wealthy and they lived in a mansion. We used to play hide and seek there. The place was so big that when Jimmy couldn't hide anymore, he would run to me crying, "Nina, Nina." I fondly remember how adorable he was, following me around. When I was in first grade, Jimmy envied my new backpack. "Let me borrow your backpack." He would borrow it and wear it with a big smile on his small back. A year later, when he got his own backpack, he started showing it off to me. I thought that was cute too. Jimmy outgrew me in height when I was in 4th grade. By then, he had become a basketball player and was good at academics. I used to get presents and cards from him every Valentine's Day. Around that time, I started getting jealous of the girls around Jimmy. I didn't realize it then, but now I know it was love. My first love. Years passed, and when Jimmy and I were in high school, he suddenly confessed his feelings. We started dating. After graduating from college and working for about 2 years, we decided to get married. Looking back, I've known Jimmy for a long time. My mother-in-law had already passed away, and my father-in-law was living alone in a big house. I would visit Jimmy's family home a few times a week to keep Eddie company and help him with chores. I often helped with shopping in the evenings. Eddie had always treated me like a daughter since I was little. I was fond of him and called him Eddie as if he were another father to me. I never thought he would actually become like another father to me. We both worked and had a joint bank account to save money for when we had kids. That said, I was worried because we couldn't have children. I'm already 35, which is generally considered an age for high-risk pregnancy. "You're getting older. Maybe it's time to give up on having kids?" Lately, Jimmy has been blaming my age for our inability to have children, and he's become disinterested in trying. Despite being hurt by his words, I still wanted a child with the man I love. I wished he would at least accompany me to medical checkups and be as informed about it as I am. "Go to the hospital yourself. I'm busy with work." When did my husband become like this? Is it since he started working and coming home tired every day? He's become cold towards me. Jimmy is a salesman, so maybe he's stressed from work. I try to make home a relaxing place for him, but it doesn't seem to resonate. As March was coming to an end and Easter was approaching, I asked Jimmy, "Where are we going for Easter this year?" He simply said, "I have to work," and went to his room. Since Jimmy would be away for work, I decided to visit both my parents and Jimmy's parents. My parents and my brother lived together happily. Because my brother stays with them, I only visit a few times a year, but they always welcome me warmly. "I'm home." "Welcome back. Good to see you." I decided to confide in my mom about our struggles to conceive. She gently held my hand and told me, "Don't rush." Her words lightened my heart a bit. Thanks, Mom. Time flew by as I relaxed at my parents' house. It was already evening, and I had to go home to prepare dinner. "I'm leaving now." "Come back anytime." Home is always warm. I returned home feeling fulfilled and waited for Jimmy. He came home around 7 p.m., but he had already eaten dinner and went straight to his room. I ate a hamburger alone and put Jimmy's portion in the fridge. I was so happy during the day, but now I feel like crying. I wondered where I went wrong, but couldn't figure it out. Did I ever neglect Jimmy? Did I ever say something cold to him? Thinking negatively is a bad habit, so I decided to go to bed early. When I woke up the next morning, Jimmy had already left. I hadn't heard he would leave so early, so I couldn't see him off. The hamburger from last night was gone. He must have eaten it this morning. The empty plate was left in the kitchen. I've been telling myself that Jimmy is tired from work, but I work too, and I'm starting to feel like I can't take it anymore. Since it's my day off, I headed to Jimmy's parents' house in the morning. "Ah, welcome!" Eddie greeted me warmly. "Are you about to have breakfast?" He hadn't eaten yet, so while Eddie prepared some bread and coffee, I made scrambled eggs and cooked bacon. I was worried that I might be intruding so early in the morning, but Eddie smiled and said, "Thank you, it's delicious." It's been a while since someone complimented my cooking, and it feels really good. Jimmy used to enjoy my cooking, but he hasn't said anything like that in years. I'm glad you like it, Eddie. Since I could spend my day off at Eddie's, we chatted and watched TV until the evening. We even got excited talking about a TV show we both like. "You like that show too, Nina?" Eddie and I have quite similar tastes. I decided to prepare not just lunch and dinner, but also some meals for Eddie to keep. "Thank you so much for doing all this," he said multiple times as he saw me off, warming my heart. On my way home, I saw something shocking. Jimmy was coming out of an arcade, dressed in a suit. Maybe he finished work early because of Easter and stopped by. That thought crossed my mind, but I couldn't shake off my unease. The next morning, I decided to follow him to see where he was going. I felt guilty for doubting Jimmy and thought about turning back several times, but he ended up going to the same arcade as yesterday. Jimmy is lying to me. The realization hurt. When he came home that night, I confronted him about what I'd seen. "Were you really at work? Please be honest." I tried to ask as gently as possible, but Jimmy didn't apologize. Instead, he raised his voice. "We used to have some money to spend freely, but now we don't because we're saving for the future." "But that's for our future children." "At your age, you can't have kids anymore. I want to stop saving and enjoy the present." His words left me stunned, a mix of surprise and sadness. I couldn't find the words to respond. The conversation ended there. Jimmy sighed and went to his room. It was clear he wasn't thinking about our future. A few weeks later, I got a call saying Eddie was injured. I rushed to the hospital, but Jimmy said he was too busy with work to come. Eddie's injury wasn't serious, but it led to the decision for him to move into a retirement community. Eddie himself suggested it. "I don't want to be a burden on you, Nina." I told him it wasn't a burden, but I also realized I couldn't be there for him all the time because of my work. I helped Eddie with the paperwork and preparations for moving into the retirement community. "How's Jimmy doing lately?" "He seems busy with work." That's all I could say. Eddie seemed to sense something, but didn't press further. Jimmy hadn't visited his parents' house for a while, and didn't help with any of the preparations. A few days later, the day came for Eddie to move into the retirement community. I accompanied Eddie to the retirement community early in the morning. It was already hot outside, and I was sweating after just a short walk. Jimmy was off work today, but he said, "You going alone is enough," and left for somewhere else. "Nina, you've been a real help. Thank you." "I'll visit you again on my next day off." Eddie smiled warmly at me. One evening, after some time had passed since Eddie moved to the retirement community, Jimmy surprisingly initiated a conversation. "So, now that Dad's in the retirement community, you don't have to take care of him anymore, right?" I tilted my head, not understanding what Jimmy was getting at. Jimmy continued, serious-faced. "You're unnecessary. I'm leaving this house." "Ah, I see. So, you want a divorce?" Jimmy nodded silently. Ever since he blamed me for not being able to have children, my feelings for him had cooled. I easily accepted the divorce. We started discussing property division, including our shared bank account. I'm not good at these kinds of conversations, but they're unavoidable. That's when Jimmy said, "I'll give you all the money we saved together." Jimmy seemed to have strange confidence because his family is wealthy. As we proceeded with the divorce, Jimmy moved back to his parents' home. Goodbye. Yeah. It felt so anticlimactic, considering we'd spent so much time together since we were young. A few days after Jimmy moved back home, our divorce was finalized. Both of us were about to take new steps in life. Just then, I got a call from Jimmy. "What the hell is going on?" He said that movers had suddenly shown up at his parents' house and started taking furniture. He accused me of doing something. Actually, when Eddie was still at home, he had told me, "Jimmy never visits. Maybe we spoiled him because we had money." Eddie looked sad. When Eddie moved to the retirement community, he said, "I won't use this furniture anymore, and if I give it to Jimmy, he'll just waste the money," and had transferred everything to me. So the movers were arranged by me. I also told Jimmy that the house and land were already on the market and a buyer had been found. "You can't just do that." Jimmy had apparently counted on the house, land, and furniture for the divorce and was yelling at me over the phone. "You hid this to trap me." Since Jimmy wouldn't listen, I decided to let his father explain. "Jimmy, it's been a while since we've talked like this. What's going on, Dad?" Eddie calmly said, "It's all settled. There's nothing you can do. You've been the one not visiting or calling me for a long time. The discussion is over. Game over." Jimmy seemed to be at a loss for words after hearing that. A few days later, I visited Eddie at the retirement community. I heard that Jimmy, who had lost his home, furniture, and savings, had moved into a rundown apartment. Apparently, he had also quit his job, counting on his family's money, and was struggling to find new work. Right now, he's barely making ends meet by doing manual labor as a day laborer at construction sites. No one could have seen this coming. "How's Nina doing these days?" I rented a place near my parents' house and am living quietly. I spend weekdays having dinner and weekends at my parents' house, unless I have other plans. My parents and brother are happy to see me so often. I'm also happy to help with household chores. "Nina, you're such a good kid." Eddie smiled at me as he always does. Then he continued with a smile. "Jimmy came to see me 3 days ago. He asked how I was doing here and if there was anything he could do for me." Hearing this, I felt a bit relieved. Maybe Jimmy had finally come to his senses. Being in a tough situation made him realize how privileged his past self was and what he should truly value now. "Can I come to visit you like this sometimes?" "Of course, thank you as always." Even after divorcing Jimmy, Eddie remains an important figure in my life, almost like a second father. I hope that someday I can have a good relationship with Jimmy again. With that thought, I head back to my parents' house. "Welcome back. How is Eddie?" "He's good. He seems happy that Jimmy visited him." "Oh, that's good to hear," my mom said. "Nina, can you help with dinner?" "Of course. Let me put my stuff away first," I replied and quickly headed to my room. I want to protect what's important to me and continue living in this peaceful life.